That's a really good question, and I'm almost feeling like, this is a tangent, but I feel like I'm the person who remembers how I felt about a conversation or remember the outcome of the conversation. I don't remember the specific words of a conversation.
Right.
So I'm having a really hard time with this question because, yeah, I don't know what those words are.
Right. Because the reason I'm asking is that I'm someone who's very word obsessed and word oriented, and I pay a lot of attention to what words people use. I've been talking to, and I've been thinking about like what words does my mother use and what words does my brother use and things of that sort. And
Hmm.
something I found interesting that you think that the people I spend the most time with, it would be easier for me to come up with words with those kind of distinctive words, but that's actually not the case. Like some people, like I was able to, you know, identify words for my cousin before my mother, but I spent way more time
Interesting.
talking to my mother than my cousin. So I was just kind of like thinking about this a lot. Um, it's
Like I was thinking about like my kids and my kids have my kids are 10 and 14, so they have that vernacular of like young kids, but like my husband, I'm like, what words does he use? We obviously talk all the time.
right,
It's
exactly.
interesting. Like I'm like what words would define him? I don't know. Now I'm
Yeah,
gonna notice and I could answer that question, in a couple days from now, but
right. But isn't this interesting that it doesn't jump out readily, even though like you spent like spent thousands and thousands of hours with him talking. It doesn't come
yeah.
readily easily. Tell me something that confuses you.
I, I'm confused why these days everyone is so set on proving what they believe instead of trying to interact with curiosity. I don't that really confuses me. I don't know why the world is so divisive. I mean, I obviously know why the world's divisive, but I'm just like I feel like why now, why is it so hard? Like I feel like the older I get, the more difficult communication is. And I feel like, yeah, I'm just confused why communication just feels extra hard these days.
You mean personally or like on a cultural level?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like communication on a personal level is almost harder because I feel like I have a lot of conversations about like, I say something and then people misinterpret it. I'm like, well, I actually was trying to say this. I feel like that's happening more often. But on a cultural level, I also feel like there's just a lot more there's not an openness of ideas. There's just not like even people who say they're open, they're still just trying to always prove what they're trying to say. So I'm just confused why communication both globally and locally is so hard.
What hypotheses have come to your mind? Hypotheses.
Um, I think that like from a large perspective, I think social media, the algorithms, I think people are continually fed what they're fed. I think that people don't go outside of themselves to really try to connect with others who are different and truly try to learn and understand. I feel like, especially when we all just got so insular, and even if we had a little circle, the circle was still pretty small, and it was still pretty people of our choosing, and we often just surround ourselves with people who are like ourselves. So I think that it just it just feeds on each other. Um, and I think personally, I think it's hard because I have a daughter who's 14. So I think teenagers are like, you know, my daughter's always saying to me, Mom, like, why are you mad at me? And I'm like, I'm not mad at you. I'm just talking. I think there's just that because that's just the age. Um, and my husband, he shifted from working in an office to working from home, and he still hasn't gone back. And as much as I love having him here, I think it's just a lot of togetherness. So I think it's just like you almost, I don't know. That's a lot of
Right.
different hypotheses, but
Right.
something's just fundamentally shifted, I feel like.
Okay. What has been the most effective way of conveying your or personal message when this miscommunication happens, or on a cultural level, what do you think? What strikes you as like, oh, that technique works to kind of like let people understand what they're talking, that to let people communicate rather than shout at each other?
I mean, I think like on a really personal level, like I've noticed with my kids, this is going to sound almost crazy, but almost sometimes just putting things in a list or writing things down for them is almost better than trying to tell them something. Or a lot of times it is, like you mentioned, I didn't work much this summer, took a sabbatical-ish, and it was letting my kids talk to me when they wanted to talk to me, not when I wanted to talk to them. I think that opens communication a lot, is just having communication on other people's terms. On a bigger scale, I think it's really trying, like my favorite people are those people who really want to have conversations and learn, and I can say something without fear of saying something wrong. Like I can stumble through it, and they'll listen to my intent and say, well, you said it like this, you must mean this. Like I don't have a lot of time for that in my life at this point, which is also terrible. But for me, it's just trying to really create stronger bonds with people that I can have open and frank and good communication with, even if we don't see eye to eye. And I think a lot of it's just trying to connect with people who are just different than yourselves, and just trying to, I don't know how to fix the problem globally, but I'm just really trying to learn from people who aren't like me. So I don't know. Do you have any good solutions?
Yes. I think, I mean, this is one of my favorite topics, how people change their minds, basically, and how can you encourage a culture of openness. I think one of the best ways is to try, and this even works in debates and intellectual stuff, to try as much as possible to agree with your intellectual rival, and it kind of like disarms them when they see you kind of agreeing with them. It kind of disarms them, and it shifts the vibe and tone of the conversation till you reach this point where like you're seeing the common denominators, and then try to see where you can go from there. So I would say one of the best ways is to try to agree as much. And I'm not saying like pretend to agree. Another thing is, I really think that that's more on the cultural side. Relationships are very important. Like, let's say with the issue with racism, right? As long, I'm gonna make up races, the green race and the purple race, right? You can talk intellectually as much as you want, but there's always this barrier. And this, once you establish kind of good relationships on a personal level between them, then it becomes more acceptable to kind of change your mind intellectually. So I think that's another factor.
100%, because so many people talk in like data, or they talk in like, and I'm like, sit down and I'm like, have you actually had a conversation with someone who's different than you about these things? And most people haven't.
Right.
So that's I love that.
And sorry, this is, and I'm talking way too much, but I'm getting just answers. One of the psychological experiments that they've done on this, which is how do you get people to get along with each other when they're not getting along. One of the best ways is for them, both of them, to work on a common problem. So, and they did this experiment on kids. When you put them together and there's one goal that they share that they need to address, it's a good bonding technique. Anyways,
That's
sorry,
good. I like that.
I talked way too much, but you asked me.
No, that's interesting.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about kids. So let's talk about motherly love. This is such a very strong type of love, but why do you? I mean, I'm gonna say an observation and tell me if you agree. It gets way less coverage in pop culture, like let's say songs or movies or books or novels, than romantic love. So the first question is, do you agree? And the second question, why is this the case?
I think, yes, it does get a lot less, airplay. And two, I think there's a lot of kids out there who don't have the right motherly love, but let's assume that kids do. It's just this assumed thing. Like, I hope that I assume my kids know, like, no matter what, I have their back. I love them. I support them. It's an unconditional love. I might not agree with what they do, but I mean, I love them, so there's not much to say because it's just like, this is a constant. Where romantic love, you have, interest and then you fall in love and you know what I mean? Like, there's like so much more of a story, whereas like motherly love is like this, as the person who's actually experiencing that. So I think there's just more of a story with romantic love than with motherly love.
Ooh, this is very interesting. Yeah, that's a very good way to think about it.
And I think that my kids probably take it for granted, where they don't take that love story for granted because it's never happened to them yet because they're too young.
But at the same time, there isn't like this. You can still like love from the mother's perspective, like love how a mom loves her kids and like the love that she feels when the kid is born and all of that stuff. For me, like okay, here's what the clash I'm feeling. I feel like in real life, motherly love is much more, I wouldn't say successful.
Static?
No, like it has a lower failure percentage than romantic love, and it's stronger in the sense that not more intense, but like more kind of grounded, and it's more meaningful than romantic love. But romantic love gets all the songs and all the movies. So yeah, it's kind of like, why is that?
Yeah, and it's a really good question.
I mean,
I guess
if ask any mother, most mothers would say that they love their kids more than they love their husband or their romantic their significant other. Why don't they get songs? It's I don't know. I find it very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you love your kids differently than you love your husband. Like I love my kids fiercely, like in a protective way, in a I feel like I want to make my kids, like, I feel like I need to give them all the tools that they can have to become good, productive, kind citizens. Like, I'm trying to teach them. I'm not trying to change my husband. Right. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, hopefully we both make each other the best versions of ourselves, but I'm not trying to mold him into something. Not even that I'm trying to mold my kids, but it's just a very different, it's just very different.
Right.
But I think one of the best things you can give to kids is a strong marriage.
Right.
So I think you shouldn't put that romantic love aside just to focus on your kids.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm gonna mull over this.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
But I think it's far more heartbreaking for a kid who doesn't have a mother's love. Like, that